Hey, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to the PHNX Cardinals podcast presented to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's top-rated sportsbook. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Johnny Venerable, joined as always, Bo Brock, the great Frank Sanders, live at the PHNX headquarters in downtown Phoenix. And, I thought we'd kick off the show today with a nice, tasty little Monday Night Football preview, Bo, between the Patriots and the Cardinals. Cardinals are 4-9. We're going to talk about that. But first, Bo, we have to talk about this bomb that Jordan Schultz report on Twitter dropped earlier today. Friend of the program, that's Jordan Schultz. And, this news has to deal with, Bo, the much maligned, infamous Steve Keim.
Somebody who's kind of been flying under the radar, right? With the Arizona Cardinals struggles on the field, 4-8. Everybody wants to get after Kliff Kingsbury, the play calling. They don't feel like it's up to snuff. Obviously, the regression from Kyler Murray. Finally had a decent game against the Chargers, but in a loss. Steve Keim finally kind of getting his due. As you mentioned, I've been talking to Jordan. I think we're probably going to get him on the show here next week because we got our big preview show today. But the report out there, do we want to get into it right now?
Yeah, producer Emma made this fantastic graphic, by the way. Look at that. We got some happy people on the graphic, some not-so people. Happy people on the graphic.
Nightingale Sunset putting it right in the chat. Keim time finally. Not what we were talking about probably in the offseason training camp, those Keim time signings. That's not it. Let's start with the top with owner Michael Bidwell and GM Steve Keim. The complete absence of accountability, especially from Keim, is appalling. His lack of professionalism permeates from the entire franchise. Keim's a fan. He's been able to keep that job because of his relationship with Bidwell, but he's not a football savant or a football mind. He's not a leader. He's a longtime personnel staffer. That's a longtime personnel staffer telling Jordan Schultz here in this article where he also went into the conversation. It's more about the final 5 games, what coaches are on the hot seat, and I'm saying, look, this isn't all a Kliff problem.
Yeah.
And points to Steve Keim.
Yeah, and I think Cardinal fans know that. Like, Bo and I, we were texting earlier today, and I sent the same thing to Espo. It's like, 2 things can be true. Kliff Kingsbury can be bad at his job, can have a tough end to his regular seasons as a college coach, as an NFL coach. But the infrastructure of this team, Steve Keim, it's his doing. And now potentially Frank Sanders, this could be his undoing.
It's definitely telling when you can look at the history of the players that has been drafted here with the Cardinals and those that have left the Arizona Cardinals that was drafted under Keim's watch and left and went and been productive someplace else. I think that in itself says, what did you evaluate when you first brought them in? While they was here, did you watch them mature and become the players you wanted them to be or you thought they would be? That's why you drafted them, Bo. But in reality, you let them go in the 3rd or the 2nd year of their contract before without giving them an extension.
Yep.
A la Christian Kirk, a la Chase Edmonds. And now you see
Hassan
Reddick. Those guys are going out and still being productive in other places. You have to ask yourself, how was he evaluating before? Yeah. And now what's tall telling right now? So it's not a good look. But the most condemning part is that the article can seem like it's very personal, but yet it's coming from somebody else. Like you hear him. It's his words, but he's giving the words from somebody else.
This is not Schultz. This is Schultz reporting this, and it's a former NFL personnel member, somebody who's in the know and has takes on Steve Keim. And look, there's been a lot of conversation about Kliff Kingsbury. And what I think we learned this season, and this is a small bit of this because it's mainly going to be about Steve Keim, is Kliff Kingsbury can't elevate, right? He can't elevate a talentless roster. Now, he wasn't without talent, right? There's certain playmaking, but I think as far as Kliff Kingsbury, we've learned that he can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. Because when you look, I did the article on Steve Keim's ranking his draft classes, right? All of his draft players he drafted. And it's such a thin list of talent. Like, think outside of Kyler Murray, who are some of the great players that Steve Keim has drafted into this organization?
Yeah, it's a lot of flash in the pans like David Johnson and John Brown, and some B and C role players like Christian Kirk and Chase Edmonds, but no like cornerstone foundational offensive players that go on to get nice extensions. There are no CeeDee Lambs. There are no Tristan Wirfs, to name a couple misses that he had, and taking Isaiah Simmons in the process. And so Kliff Kingsbury was always going to be up against the 8 ball because he needed everything to go well, kind of like a game-managing quarterback, right? You got to put the good defense in place. You got to elevate him with the supremely gifted offensive players, and then let him coach Kyler and the quarterbacks. But with Steve now, I mean, it's twofold for me. It's like the team is losing because last year, a lot of people were still anti-Steve Keim. Despite the start of the season, the team was 10-2. People were saying, yeah, but Steve Keim, he's got to go. This is short term. And those people have been proven right, frankly, that you look at this team foundationally. I mean, the LA Rams winning last night. I mean, the Cardinals are a loss on Monday from being tied for last place in the division with quarterbacks that are, I mean, it's egregious. Brock Purdy, Geno Smith, with all due respect. I mean, you have Kyler Murray. You gave him
New
200
to the party, Baker Mayfield.
Yes. Goodness. We'll get into that, I'm sure, at some point. But $230 million you've invested in Kyler Murray. You have the best quarterback, yet you're in last place, potentially in last place, if you lose on Monday. And so, Frank, we sit here and we think about, okay, does this get back to Michael Bidwell? Does this start to crank up the heat? Because the heat's been on Kliff Kingsbury. Kliff Kingsbury has the odds on gambling sites to be the next coach fired, head coach in the NFL. There's nothing been about Steve Keim, as Bo alluded to.
It's crazy, right? You would think it would go hand in hand. And I think the reality is that Mike has to see the writing on the wall in regards to what's being taken place. Of course, we talked about Adrian Wilson.
Yep.
And my other brother that's up there,
Quentin Harris.
Quentin Harris is those guys are leading in the scout department, but those guys are also leading as potential general managers to go other places.
Yeah.
And I think he has to look at from an inside perspective of what those guys are bringing to the table, what they're talking about compared to what Steve Keim has been able to do, and what's the vision for the franchise going in the long-term effect, because what we've seen thus far, and we can go back just this offseason and watching how nothing happened across the board. We saw guys that get signed, Tanner Vallejo. Ooh, we brought him in and thought it was amazing. I guess that was the big splash this offseason. But I think that's the part where you have to look internally and see what the other guys bring to the table, because Keim definitely his record is not a good one.
Bo, I want to pose this to you quickly. Who do you think this came from? There's been a lot of questions. I know our own Howard Balzer and I DM before the show, and he's like, is this an ex-employee? Is this a rival GM or executive? I would find it hard to believe that a rival would put this out there, because you're benefiting off of Steve Keim's incompetence right now.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it's fair to ask those questions. It's important to add context to the story. But when you look at the state of the Arizona Cardinals, you can look at the injuries, you can look at the decisions as far as the roster, the coaching, the offensive play calling, the quarterback play. They've won 5 games in their last 18, or their last 18 games. I mean, nothing is going right with this organization. To sit back and say, well, where's this coming from? Like, I remember the AFC executives saying something about Kliff Kingsbury that was not very kind last year. I'm like, well, AFC executive, it could be from the fucking Jaguars. Who gives a shit what that guy thinks? That's a poverty franchise, right? But the fact that somebody who's been employed in this league and has been around this organization, you would assume, and sees this, and it kind of vindicates what we've been talking about, right? It's concerning, right? And the thing that stands out to me about Jordan Schultz's article, it is that he calls Steve Keim a fan. And you look at how this team has been built. That's how a fan would build a football team. It's like building.
Well, maybe not every fan.
Well, I mean, like somebody where you're looking more at the playmakers, right? You're looking at your outside weapons. You're looking at your wide receivers. I know Frank, he's a former player. He'd probably build a team like that because he's a wide out. But outside of that, like, he's not building it where games are won and lost in the NFL, and that's in the trenches.
Falling in love with Isaiah Simmons, taking an off-ball linebacker the following year. He's taken some running backs fairly high. He's traded so many resources on wide receivers, and I think it's a great point. I think and a lot of his moves have been short-term, not long-term. I mean, you remember the end of the era with Carson Palmer when they would not get a successor at quarterback, and it blew up in their face. And so what did he do the next year? He forced the pick on Josh Rosen to kind of double down on his mistake. And then he's been given reset after reset. And I think the biggest the jury's out on Steve Keim with public opinion. Like, the fan base, 90%, I would say, would prefer he not be the GM, Frank, moving forward. How does Michael Bidwell and the Cardinals, because you've had interactions with Steve, you've talked to us about him off air, that he is kind of like the guy, the Grim Reaper of sorts. You mentioned him. Like, but he's got, the staying power of 20 plus years. It's a very frightening scenario for Cardinal fans to sit back and say, wow, is this guy really going to control the offseason in 2023?
Yeah, we watched Keim. I've watched Keim come through the ranks, and literally when I first got there in '95, and he got there in '96, '97, he was there as the Grim Reaper, and he was one of those guys that you called when we had guys that was getting cut during practice or doing training camp or mini camp. He was the guy that was going to pick guys up and say, "Hey, man, you need to bring your playbook with you." And he was going through different stages of the thing. But this might not be an indictment on Keim. It's probably more on Bidwell and his loyalty to him and what that means to him in regards to how he trusts what he's able to do.
And being able to find good football people.
Right. And the idea is that, you're giving your fan base something to look at, but in reality, the trenches is where it's at, what needs to take place. And there's been some really effed up situations that if Mike looks back and he has to say, well, did I not want to pay these guys? And did Keim have it in a position where when you look at Hassan Reddick in his last year here with the Cardinals, he went from like 1 sack, 2 sack to like, boom, 11 sack, 10 sack 1 year. And I was like, that's what you drafted a guy for. And then you don't want to sign him back. You don't want to give him the money that he deserves.
Yep.
You don't. Now we're arguing with semantics and not the player that you really drafted. And so who argued that point? Was it Mike saying he's not worth it, I'm not paying him that money? Same thing with Christian Kirk. Did you say he's not worth it, I'm not paying him this money? And was Steve arguing that, hey, I drafted these guys. These guys can really bring something to the table. Just give him another year, Mike. Give him another contract. That would be the difference. And I think that Keim might be a byproduct of that conversation. And I think Mike has loyalty in his dad to a fault. They both had the same thing. They had an ideal number on what they thought about players and what they would play. Remember, we let go of Aeneas Williams. Hall of Famer, but he was 8-time Pro Bowler. We let go Larry Centers, who was Mr. Larry before Larry, after the Larry Wilson.
Tyrann Mathieu left the franchise, won a Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean,
I'm not gonna blame Keim for wanting to restructure with.
But he should have given him that contract to begin with,
right?
Though.
Yeah, and that was one of those where he's puffing his chest out. Hey, I hit on this 3rd round pick. I was able to turn this guy around, and I played a big role in that. And Steve Keim and having the old Patrick Peterson that we liked.
Before his heel turn.
Right. When he mentored Honey Badger and it was the no-fly zone, those were great years. Those were prime Steve Keim years,
and then he should have been shown the door when the team bought him out. It would
have been a great time for a divorce in 2018. I think everybody will agree with that.
Let me ask you this question, because I think we talked about this on an audio-only pod, if you haven't checked it out, earlier this week, but Steve Keim was really Michael Bidwell's first hire as a GM. He did not hire Rod Graves. Rod Graves kind of came up within the ranks. He was another internal candidate, but he was brought up by Bill Bidwell. Mm-hmm. And so Keim and Bidwell, Michael, have been together since Steve has joined the organization. Do you think there's some fear, Bo, with Michael Bidwell, uncertainty, cutting loose with Keim and saying, like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing?
Right. Yeah. No doubt about it. I mean,
I don't know anybody to bring in.
My late 30s, and I don't want to make any new friends. I'm sure Michael Bidwell in his late 50s doesn't want to make any new friends, right? He doesn't want to have to find a new best friend. He doesn't want to have to say goodbye to Steve Keim, who he's been hanging with for close to 24 years. But the unfortunate thing here sometimes, and people come across this in their own profession, and I'm sure a bunch of people in the chat, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And who he knows is the owner of the Arizona Cardinals, and it's Michael Bidwell. And he's put in a tough position. And also another key part of this article from Jordan Schultz, which it's not long. It's a paragraph long.
And it's not just about Steve Keim,
it's about coaches on the hot seat. And adding context to it is the lack of accountability. And I've been saying this since they fired Steve Wilkes after 1 year. It was Steve Keim and Michael Bidwell being the brain trust of this organization and saying, we're holding ourselves accountable for this mistake. We made the wrong hire.
Correct.
We're not going to get it wrong again. We promise you that. We're going to look at ourselves, take a long, hard look at ourselves in the mirror and hold ourselves responsible and accountable. And I don't see anything. They just said that because I don't see anything that reflects that they truly hold themselves accountable.
Right.
And are holding themselves accountable on a daily basis. And this organization is suffering from it. And finally, blind squirrels find a nut every once in a while. They've got a franchise quarterback.
You've built a team that has one winning season in 7 years. And yet a GM in Tennessee went 7 for 7 with winning seasons and was fired. I do think that could be the spark that gets this conversation going, like, oh shit, John Robinson, good at his job, some dysfunction there, got fired. not only fired like during the season while his team is leading his division. And then you have Steve Keim, one game away from last place and has had one winning season. By the way, that did not end well. Like last year, they won 11 games. They were 10-2, and they flamed out in spectacular fashion, was inexplicably given a contract extension. And now, Frank, it's like, what do we do here? And Bo and I talked about it. We still have a pretty good idea. Kliff Kingsbury is still the 4th highest paid head coach in his division. So we don't assume Keim is making like astronomical money. It's more than just the money. It's the relationship that they're going to have to cut loose.
I definitely think, well, we know it's a relationship because here's the situation. You talked about the friendship and the quality of it is that, I don't want to bring it up, but it's on record. Our general manager had a DUI.
Yeah.
He got suspended, but he kept his job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily, that's
an
typically,
extreme DUI
it's typically a fireable
that
offense.
he had to go to jail for 2 days.
Right.
He had to come back and they had to check him in for 2 days, and he had to be away from the facility and got suspended.
Yeah, and that's typically
for
a fire.
5 weeks, right before the season started, and he got a $200,000 fine.
Like a DUI is bad enough. Extreme, like you have no business being on the road.
We say that's why we say those typically are fireable offenses. But I will say this here, man. Like you gotta, I'm gonna speak back to the locker room because that's what's being affected by that more than anything. Mm-hmm. We're talking about firing Keim, we're talking about firing, and the bad positional. Some of the bad performances of what he's been able to do, whether keeping players or letting go players. Let's look at this. It's affecting the locker room. The fans, you sit on the field, but it's affecting the locker room.
Yep.
It's affecting the morale. It's affecting the attitude. It's affecting what I know, who is the guy I can trust, who I can trust on Sundays, who I can trust on Monday Night Football, and bless God, we play on Thursday night and getting some primetime television. But that's the situation where we see the residual effect of that. So you're not seeing the friendships that guys normally have, the camaraderie you normally see. You're watching when you get to watch a Kyler go sit on the bench by himself and watch guys disassociate themselves on the field in the midst of a game. It's because those things that when you have a relationship with guys and you know this guy's going to be there for you, you see that. But when you're watching them bring in guys and cut guys or, not keeping Hassan Reddick or not keeping a Chandler Jones or these guys that how about J.J. Watt came in for Chandler Jones? Maybe he came in for Chandler Jones and thought that I'll have another compadre on the other side that'll ball out with me. Unfortunately, J.J. got hurt. Unfortunately, Chandler got hurt. And we never got to see the fullness of that thing mature. We saw maybe 1 or 2 games. But I think that's the part where you start looking at how all these decisions that's being made, whether they're buddies or friends or compadres or whatever they are, drinking buddies, you get to the place where you start saying, how is this affecting the locker room? And I've seen it for years, and it's affecting it in a negative way.
Yeah, Mike makes a really good point. And I think Steve Keim is the best GM in modern Cardinal history, but that doesn't mean he's immune to keep his job forever. If we can scroll up just a quick second, David. So Keim and Kliff go hand in hand. Keim should have been gone with Wilkes, 100%. I get Bidwell and Keim are friends, but when it starts affecting the checkbook, changes need to be made. Like the Eagles fired Doug Peterson, who's won their only Super Bowl. Like I feel
that
like
is crazy.
It might also be a scenario, Bo, in which Michael Bidwell and his standards, God love him, his dad did not do a lot of winning. You played for his late father. They had 3 winning seasons in how many years? And now Michael's like, well, Steve, we've been to the playoffs a couple times and we're competitive. Everybody talks about how talented we are.
Right.
Everybody talks about, well, the team's underachieving, but we're talented. I think he hears that stuff and is like, yeah, no, this is okay. We're fine.
Yeah, and they did a pretty good job of patting themselves on the back for the BA era. And when you think about it, it yielded 1 playoff win, right? Like they still kind of walk around with their chest puffed.
2 playoff bursts and 1 win.
But we got to look at this, Bo. Like when you're watching film, you're watching the television, and the camera pans on those 2 guys, they're all engaged.
Mm-hmm.
Like they know,
great.
I'm saying, but they know
they care.
But
they care.
but that's
sure.
Let's
this isn't Martha Ford.
But let's put that out there, because it looks like the decisions being made are horrible.
Right.
But you can't come to a game realizing your decisions were bad, piss poor,
right?
And you're going to be in the box, or
I'm not here to knock his dad. Nobody's here to knock his dad.
No, but look at Mike as well as.
I'm going to back up your point.
You know what I mean?
Michael is more engaged, and I think a better owner than his late father. But that doesn't mean that he's making good decisions right now.
But is it good enough to compete in today's NFL? Like I thought that I think Michael Bidwell has done a great job in taking this team out of irrelevancy, right?
Yes, correct.
And becoming kind of a
middle of the pack,
not a laughing stock, Frank, but
No.
they were certainly poked fun of. There were the horror stories from past ownership, obviously, and Michael Bidwell emphasized turning things around, getting the stadium done, no longer sharing a stadium with ASU and getting out there in Glendale and having their own place to call home, and Cardinals fans to come and tailgate and have a blast at the stadium when there's not too many opposing fans that have bought up season ticket holders tickets. He's done a good job in moving them close to neutral as far as the NFL goes and having some success, a Super Bowl appearance, right? I mean, nobody saw that coming. And then wanting to taste that more often, getting close to it with Bruce Arians, but then, they get close and then it seems like they take so many steps back, right?
Yeah.
And they get in their own way because it's like they're reading their own press clippings. They're buying too much into what could have just been a flash in the pan, short success wasn't something that was sustainable.
Well, remember,
they don't know how to build.
They started selling playoff tickets last year.
Yeah,
for the home game, way before they had locked up the division.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's pretty much standard practice across the league.
Should this team though be operating like that when it hasn't won a division title since 2015?
I know the optics suck on that, but what are you going to do?
Yes, and they should know their coach has trouble notching up dubs in December and January. I think Michael Bidwell wants to win. That doesn't mean he knows how to win, but you can win right now on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Listen, the best time to be on DraftKings is right now. We've got World Cup action. The NBA is in full swing. I'm losing a lot of money betting on the Phoenix Suns. I may have to pivot here after these last two games. We have a loaded slate.
They need a new owner.
Well, they're getting one. They're getting one. Right. We need a new GM. Maybe check back in January. And then, of course, you've got Monday Night Football, Cardinals hosting the Patriots. We're going to get into in a moment. All you got to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use that promo code PHNX. Place a $5 bet on any NFL team to win their game. Get $150 in free bets if they do. Not the spread, mind you, the money line. So go and take your $5, put it on the Dallas Cowboys this weekend against the Houston Texans, and you will prosper because of it. Friends, that is my DraftKings pick of the week. I'm actually going to take the Cowboys minus 17 against the Houston Texans. It's the biggest spread of the NFL season, and I think they cover and then some. You can do the same only at DraftKings Sportsbook with that promo code PHNX. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See those show notes for details, Bo.
It makes me sick that you're going to be betting on Dallas, but I understand it.
Good
I get
team.
the pick. Yeah, DraftKings Sportsbook makes it easy for you to dabble as you love to do. Also, what makes it easy to have some great beer, great food, great atmosphere. Our friends over at Four Peaks on 8th Street in Tempe, they've got that fantastic brew that everybody loves. I'm having myself a wow light citrus ale. This is the light stuff here. Didn't want to pack on too many pounds while we're sitting here on the more furniture. Frank's got a hazy and Johnny's got a wow wheat. We've got the fall pack still here. You got the Redbird lager just in time for Cardinals season. Hopefully you've been enjoying that all season long. And now they've got the Advent calendar box. Yeah,
Ooh.
You can give the gift of beer this holiday season. Four Peaks has limited supplies of their December Advent calendar box. So you're a couple days in December, so you get to catch up, have a couple good nights before having to go one beer at a time. $55. That'll get you an Advent calendar box. Enjoy the specialty beers, tall boys, and more. Purchase at the 8th Street Pub in Tempe. Give that gift of beer, and if you're not just getting the gift of beer, go out there. You got Army-Navy this weekend, right? That's a great game to always check out. You want a place to watch it, Four Peaks, perfect place for it.
Perfect place to get your Cardinals update is with this guy, Bo Brock, who is live at practice all week. And it seemed like forever since the Cardinals have played a real actual football game before they peed the bed in the fourth quarter against the LA Chargers. But they do play the Patriots on Monday Night Football this week. Patriots also off a loss. Bo, what can you tell us? Practice report, where is it trending toward for Monday Night Football? I'm going to start with Byron Murphy.
Yeah, Byron Murphy was he's been day-to-day. He was out there on Wednesday, not out there on Thursday. It was a closed walkthrough today. I don't believe he practiced today. It's kind of like predictive. I mean, they're out there in their sweats or shorts and T-shirts. DeAndre Hopkins, though, did return.
Yeah.
He was out with an illness on Thursday. He's already back out there in a full capacity. Greg Dortch has practiced 3 days in a row. I think you're going to see him in the slot role come Monday night, which is good. I mean, it adds more playmaking that you already got back with Hollywood Brown a couple weeks ago. So now you've got 3 guys that Kyler can really find in this passing attack. Doesn't look like Rondell Moore is going to play. He hasn't practiced all week. Got the groin injury.
Shut him down.
Haven't seen much from Max Williams. It's interesting, kind of just following along with Max Williams. So you're already shorthanded at tight end. So Trey McBride, maybe Steven Anderson at that position. But other than that, relatively healthy. The offensive line, you're going to be without Rashad Coward, who emerged as your starting left guard. He's out with a pec injury. So we'll probably see a guy like Cody Ford get heavy reps come Monday night.
Well, and that's why they traded for him. Frank, how frustrating is it for somebody like Byron Murphy? Contract year, he's trying to make his money, can't get on the field. Or do you look at it like, well, this team 4-8, do I even need to play?
Oh, he definitely needs to play. It's without a doubt he's itching to play because he has this is his time to get his money, man. And you want to get out and show more than what you've showed thus far. What if his last game wasn't a good showing and then he got hurt and it was just like, man, should he have been out there?
Yeah.
Did he get hurt because he shouldn't have been out there? It's one of those question marks, and I think, but every player wants to play. Every player it was definitely a contract year.
Yep.
He has a good resume and an upside, and so I think the Cardinals shouldn't hesitate. They should learn from last year's debacle and what they did in the offseason on how they was deciding to sign guys and how it affected the locker room and how players were hurt and injured because they wasn't in camp. They wasn't in great shape coming into camp. They wasn't in great shape coming into the season. They should learn from that. So, but he's a young talent, a young stud, and the NFL has there's a limit. It's not unlimited. It's a limit on great cornerbacks, and he's one of those cornerbacks that can be pretty productive for the Cardinals.
Yeah, he's big and physical, and I think the Cardinals need to strongly consider bringing him back, but at what price tag? And that's part of the reason we were talking about earlier. It's just like they waited too long to get these guys in great shape in their lineup. Byron Murphy played less snaps in year 2 than he did year 1 for Vance Joseph, and that's kind of compounded the problem of now what do you do with him? This weekend is going to be a big tell for the Cardinals offense, Bo. We look at New England's defense. It is top 10 in almost every statistical category in the NFL. Their offense stinks. We've talked about it at nauseum, Patricia and company. But the defense is playing well. Yeah. And then you figure Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Kyler Murray, it's their second game altogether. And so hopefully that's enough in and of itself, along with James Conner, to be able to at least move the football and be productive.
Yeah, this Patriots defense, great against the run, right? And you see that overall, as you mentioned, numbers look solid across the board. But then also, if you peel back the onion a little bit, you realize that they've kind of feasted on, they played Mitchell Trubisky in week 2. They've played Zach Wilson, who actually threw for over 350 yards in one game and then 77 in the next. And then Sam Ellinger played against them. He was awful. So they feasted on a couple bad quarterbacks and kept the points totals down in those games. So it's been good. It's always good with Belichick and his whole staff over there. But I think that this is a team that, you know, the Arizona Cardinals should put points against, because as you mentioned, with the playmaking that they could potentially have on the field Monday night, you have to at this point.
Do you think that the coaching matchup is so drastic that it kind of overshadows the Cardinals' would-be personnel advantage? Because it's like Mac Jones versus Kyler Murray, get the fuck out of here. But then you look on the sideline and it's Kliff Kingsbury versus Bill Belichick.
Right. And you know, Belichick, I think, won that game of chess a couple years ago.
He did. He won with no offense.
He had Cam Newton back there, and they found a way to beat the Cardinals. And like Kliff, like we talked to him this week, and he kind of laughed about it. He's like, he almost said he was, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but not too far off, he'd be embarrassed to beat a guy like Belichick. Because
my God,
he's a legend. He's the GOAT as far as
what a stupid. Nah, I'm not saying you said that.
He's trying to, you know, obviously.
Well, you got drafted by
give
Bill.
Credit
played
to,
for
in
Bill.
respect to.
But you
Belichick.
have to have the mentality that this is your time.
Right. He doesn't think of himself like that.
That's the part where. This is one of the things I said at the beginning of the year, looking at our schedule. You have to look at yourself if you're going to jump in. If you're going to take the leap that we're supposed to. We started out great last year. We fumbled all the way in, and then we came in this offseason thinking that we're going to sign Kyler, keep Kliff. We added D-Hop. We got Hollywood Brown. And now the mentality has to be, if you're going to move to the next level, You can't be afraid to beat the guys that have been considered the best of all times. You can't be afraid to deal with Kansas City and the Mahomes effect and look at these guys like, oh my God, we're playing Kansas City or Oakland Raiders or Minnesota Vikings, whoever it is that we're playing. You have to have the mentality that you want to take them down. We was in the NFC East for years back in the days when I was here, and it was Dallas. It was Dallas. It was San Fran. It was Washington. It was the Eagles. It was the Giants. But the mentality was we were just the Cardinals. Fuck that. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's how Bruce Arians operated.
That's how you operate, because you have to have the mentality that you have to be wanting to beat these teams. And the coaches, remember this here, the coaches are the chess players. We're the pawns. They may have some bishops, some knights. Some teams got more queens and kings that can move around the chessboard a little better.
The Cardinals have more talent than most teams in the NFC.
But mentally, you have to be ready to move to that next level.
Last night was like, we're just gonna punt on this. We brought in a
McDaniel's a good OC.
36 hours
yeah, he's won some Super Bowls, whatever.
I mean, watch this here, guys. You know the balls you gotta have to look at the NFL and say, I don't need an offensive coordinator. I can make my defensive coordinator who was here, who left my team to be a head coach as a defense coordinator, come back and make him my offensive line / offensive coordinator coach. And we don't have an offensive coordinator. On the Patriots team, we got 2 defensive coordinators coaching our team, and that's in Bill Belichick and Matt Patricia. That's, excuse my language, that is absolutely a slap in the face to every offensive team or every offensive coordinator in the league. Like, you can do this. Your defensive coordinator can be the offensive coordinator.
Right.
You think Matt Jones is sitting in the offensive meeting like, yeah, this is a great play? While he's cussing at the coach like, man, get the ball down the field. Why are we stinking? Why are we effing it up? Because you think that this guy can call plays because he can stop offensive plays. Now he can call offensive plays. That's the balls of these two guys. The balls of these two coaches is absolutely amazing.
But he's got the collateral.
Amazing.
But Bill Belichick has the collateral to do that.
Amazing.
Sure. But how about, the comments from Vance Joseph yesterday, Frank? I don't know if you saw him, where Vance Joseph said this about Matt Patricia, who's their offensive play caller. He said they like to run the ball. They can establish the run, but a lot of screen plays out there, very conservative. It's like a defensive guy calling offensive plays. What's interesting? It's like Mac Jones, since returning as starters the last 6 weeks, has been a screen machine. He's thrown 37 screens in the last 6 games.
It's crazy.
Now on the rest of this, overall on the season, talking about how conservative Matt Patricia is a play caller, Kyler Murray's thrown more screen passes than Mac Jones.
Can I tell something to Vance Joseph?
Can you say that again? Can you please say
Kyler
that?
Murray, from your offensive guru,
the fudge,
Kliff Kingsbury, must be. Does he have a defensive background?
No.
Kliff? Because why is he calling offense like he's a defensive coordinator?
I like Vance Joseph.
It's crazy,
Vance,
man.
your defense has given up the second most points per game in the NFL this year, 26.8, right behind Detroit at 27. They have given up 30 points in each of their last, how many games? 4 out of their last 5 games.
I bet our defense got more snaps than most defenses in the NFL, too. Though.
That's true. No, listen, me dogging Vance in the defense is not giving,
they know what
taking
they're
some
gonna
off
do.
of the offense.
They know what they're going to do. It's going to look exactly like it did against the Chargers. It's going to be death by 1,000 cuts, tiny cuts. It's going to be 2-yard pass, 3-yard pass. And they're just going to do that all game long. Now, here's the difference. Mac Jones is not Justin Herbert.
He's got a much better head coach, though. I would not recommend taking
Bill Belichick going to do as far as Mac Jones and the offensive side of the football?
If you're on Underdog Fantasy, stay away from this game. That's the best thing I can describe. Go bet on the NBA that night, and you can do that on Underdog Fantasy. Listen, Bo and I, we didn't fare so well in the PHNX year-long fantasy football standings.
Mm-hmm.
Bo's fighting for his Waffle House life. I thankfully have some air to breathe, but he needs a dub this weekend, or my man finishes in last place and has to sit at a Waffle House
because we have these
24 hours
rock and jock rules.
I told him I would be there.
Dumb bonus point escalators. It's like,
to be fair, your team scored the least amount of points of anybody.
It's because as soon as I saw it was these Donald Duck scoring rules, I was out on this league.
He was out on our year-long league. We're in on Underdog Fantasy, though. It's fantastic. Yeah. Draft your team against 5 of your friends. The highest scoring squad for the night wins that cold, hard cash. Thursday night football, Friday night NBA, doesn't matter. NBA, you can draft 6 NBA players. There's no positional limits. How about that? It's been fantastic. Hires and lowers for players, and it's easy. All you got to do is go to UnderdogFantasy.com, download the app, use the promo code, you guessed it, PHNX. Underdog is going to match your first deposit up to $100. Again, put in $100, get out $100 free from Underdog Fantasy, but you got to use that promo code PHNX. And yeah, we're having a good time on Underdog Fantasy, even as the Cardinals struggle to score points, Bo.
Yeah, you're shit-talking my fantasy team.
I'm not. I'm trying to help you. I told you all the waiver pickups this week.
It's fine. I'm comfy sitting here.
Now I don't know if I'm going to show up to help you eat your waffles.
And there's more furniture, chair, which is nice and it's stylish. And if you look at the rest of the studio, it's got some great more furniture all over the place. What you need to do before this holiday season, before you're hosting family and friends and people are drinking way too much eggnog and making asses of themselves, is pimp out your living room, your dining room, your bedroom, wherever it may be that needs some great furniture. Check out More Furniture right now. Go to the website, morefurniture.com. That's morefurniture.com. You can get some great stuff like we have right here on camera in the studio. Like all of us have at our respective houses as well. We've dabbled in some more furniture lately.
Yeah, I purposely just try to sit here as long as I can to enjoy the fine things of more furniture instead of my futon at home. And listen,
that's because you'd be a bad dude. That's why you'd be bad. Man.
I would be bad.
Mama spank you well.
It's like Kliff is a futon, Bill Belichick is more furniture. That's the best way that I can describe it right now. And we're going to go in to our official game predictions for Patriots at Cardinals on Monday Night Football. I'm going to start with you, Bo Brock. What do you like?
I like the Arizona Cardinals in this game. Ooh. I said this earlier this week. I think the Cardinals are going to win the next 2 games against some very offensively challenged football teams. I don't care. I'm not scared of the big, bad Belichick. He's a shell of himself. He doesn't have the personnel to do it. I think the Cardinals win this one on Monday Night Football, 24-18. You guys can crush me in the comments. I don't give a shit. I'm going chalk on this game, too. I got my offensive player of the game is Kyler Murray. Kyler's going to have a big game. Dual threat quarterbacks have kind of feasted on this Patriots defense all season long. You had Lamar Jackson go over 100 yards on the ground. You had Justin Fields put up some yards on the ground. I think guys like Kyler Murray, players that can get after it with their legs, hopefully some design runs in there from Kyler Murray. He's going to be your offensive star of the game. Zach Allen, Mac Jones has been sacked 20 times in his last 6 games. And a lot of that pressure's come from the interior of the opposing defensive line. Who's the best player right now for the Cardinals there? Probably Zach Allen. Bill Belichick's going to try to combat J.J. Watt. Give me Z.A. having a big game, probably getting to the quarterback at least once, batting down some passes. And then your unsung player of the game, Greg Dortch, coming back from the thumb injury. He's going to play the slot. He's going to get some open field there to make some plays for the Arizona Cardinals, with D-Hop and Hollywood Brown playing their second straight game together.
Listen, I love the rah-rah mentality I can come to expect from my co-host, Bo Brock. But I'm going to use cold hard facts here. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. Cardinals suck on national TV, and they suck at home. They've won 1 home game in the last 13 months. That was the Thursday night game against the New Orleans Saints. Now they have to play Bill Belichick on the national stage. I'm going to go ahead and guess that Kliff Kingsbury is not up for the task. I do want to say, I think we have a big game from Hollywood Brown. Hollywood looked good in his return 2 weeks ago. Now he's had 2 additional weeks off. I think he has a big game with Hopkins demanding most of the coverage from Bill and his defense. And on the flip side, I think this is a good Zaven Collins game. Stevenson, they're going to want to run the ball up in the middle. They've got Hunter Henry and company. This is kind of an ugly game where I think we're going to see a lot of punts. Zaven does well when teams do not spread out this Cardinal team, and it's more conventional I formation offenses that they face. Unsung hero, I'm trying to will this into his existence. I love you, Marcus Golden, Dennis Gardeck. You can have them. Let's get the young kids in at pass rusher. Cameron Thomas has been their most effective on the edge this year, and I think he will do well using his strength on the edge to set the tone, both in the run game and in the passing game. Again, no shots at Marcus Golden, but he's not what he once was. Play the kids, Frank.
Look, 5 games to go. We just had a bye week. You got to come back with a new mentality and a fresh start. At the end of the day, you got to let all your chips fall so you have an idea what will happen at the end of the season.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Look, I'm taking the Cardinals, and the only reason why I'm doing it is because this is what happens Winners get the spoils of victory, like we saw last week with the Chargers. Losers get the lesson. I'm hoping that the Cardinals learned the lesson this weekend while they had the week off to realize how to play 4 quarters of football. This is a great challenge right now, mentally and emotionally, because you're going against Belichick. For Kliff, it's his time to overcome the weakness of being the stepchild in NFL. And I had a couple other words I wanted to use, guys. I had to get around that edge. But I believe that this is an opportunity where the Cardinals can learn from the lesson of almost coming up with the victory. It was told how this game was going to come down to the last seconds and pulling it off and not giving the ball back to Justin Herbert. And
what about what Frank says? How many lessons do the Cardinals need to learn?
Look, and here's the funny thing about it. They got 5 more games to figure it out. If they run the table, they would have learned the lesson on how to win. They would have learned the lesson on how to finish the football game. They will learn how to be a team. And something might have clicked in that moment. We saw JC run for 100 and 120 plus. There's no stopping D-Hops. He makes plays. We added Hollywood Brown. He just came back, his first game back with some opportunities. GD, we know Gregory Dortch can make plays. That's offensive conversation, right? Trey McBride has to step up. This is the opportunity where, look, this is enough game and repetition that he can say to himself, it's time to be the big dog, and now I got to be the big dog. Maybe he'll never drop up and pass like that again. And that's the process. And so guess what? I believe in these Cardinals in the last 5 games. And the reason why is because I seen it in 1998. We had 6 games to go. We needed to win 4, and we pulled a rabbit out of our hat. That's what happened. We found ourselves in the playoffs as a wild card. It's not impossible. It's very possible.
I want to believe, but yet I turn around and there are stories and headlines and just garbage that follows this team, Bo Brock. And we talked about it earlier. This Jordan Schultz report is not going to go away. You know, Steve Keim reportedly is not feeling well enough to do his regular hit on radio tomorrow. And so today, I'm sorry. Yeah. It is today. NyQuil it up. Call in. Let's hear from Steve Keim. But we haven't heard from Steve Keim. I just feel like between the issues with the coaching staff and the firing of Sean Kugler, the fact that Kyler Murray is in the headlines every week that's not football related and people are dragging him, the Keim stuff now, I don't know as much goodwill as like J.J. Watt and company can bring this franchise. I just think they look at it's like they're checking their watch and they're checking their Malibu flights.
I don't get the sense from this team. I've been around the locker room. There's too many guys with too much pride to go on prime time and get blown out again, to lose. And they don't give a shit about their GM being talked about today. It probably doesn't even make it to most of the guys' Twitter feed for the most part. I mean, you want that message to be sent to Bidwell and to Keim. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The players don't care, Frank. I wouldn't assume that they care what's being said about their GM. And it's not anything that they haven't seen before. That's the one thing that I like this article because it restarts the conversation and it doesn't sound like a broken record from Johnny, myself, and Frank. But this team has 2 directions to go for the final 5 games. They can continue to play like shit, or they can play better. They can put their best foot forward. There's jobs to be had. There's jobs to be kept or lost in the next 5 games. And there's a reputation, a huge reputation, as far as your franchise quarterback who doesn't want to go out, with kind of vindicating a bunch of people that were saying that was a bad contract.
Yeah, you've got a job to do. It's to go to gophnx.com. Become a diehard right now. Get 20% off on all merchandise at gophnx.com, the PHNX merchandise locker. You also get access to our premium diehard level content, a free shirt or hat of your choosing. It's not a one-off. It's every flipping year. And I don't know if you guys knew about this or not. 90+% of the content, the written content from Howard Balzer and company at gophnx.com is for free now. But if you want that sweet, sweet nectar of the elusive the exclusive content, I should say, you got to become a diehard. Go and look at the testimonies from some of our PHNX faithful. You will not be sorry that you did. Hey, here's a good reminder. We are back for Monday Night Football, your definitive coverage of Patriots at Cardinals. We've got our pregame show, which will be dubbed the PHNX Tailgate Show with myself, Bo Brock, the GM Saul Bookman, Shane Diefenbach and company. Then the halftime show, myself, Damian Anderson, Frank Sanders, and then the post-game show. So everything and anything Cardinals, Monday Night Football, we have you locked and loaded. In the meantime, be sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. Are these the final days of Steve Keim's tenure with the Arizona Cardinals? We'll find out. Stay tuned.